So who are you?
I'm Jennifer Ouellette. I'm Program Director of the Science and Entertainment Exchange, which is a new initiative of the National Academy of Sciences, and our job is to essentially bring scientists and Hollywood together.
What's the purpose of your exchange?
Well, we call it fostering creative collaborations between scientists and entertainment industry professionals, and that can be anything from answering a simple technical question. If a TV writer is trying to put a script together and they get stuck on a science point, they will call us and we'll find someone that they can call up and say, how does this work? I need it in like 20 minutes, can we have that? Or we can do something like what we did for Tron 2.0. Jeff Silver, the producer, is on our advisory board, and we got him 4 or 5 scientists in some key areas that are relevant to the film. And we got together with their writers, their director, a couple of producers, and they all sat in a room and they just brainstormed some of the plot points. So it can be anything from that to a first-time screenwriter who's trying to put his first script together.
Yeah.
The idea is that we get them in a room together talking, because that's where the innovation comes. You know that you don't go listen to lectures and come away inspired very often. I mean, you might come away with some interesting information, but it's the chatting about it afterwards, over coffee, over drinks, or just sitting together down in a room where you get those sort of insights, those aha light bulb moments, and that's what we want to foster.
Yeah. Do you ever take directors to research labs? I got really good tours of Microsoft Research where they're doing some pretty cool stuff that looks a lot like what you see on CSI in terms of screens that are touch and that you can zoom in and scan things, and lots of fantastic looking stuff, but it's actually real working prototypes.
Right. And we do that. It depends on who the client is and what they want. Janet and Jerry Zucker, they're a husband-wife producer-director couple. Yeah. They are the co-founders of the Exchange, and they had a project where they really wanted to go into a neuroscience lab. So we hooked them up with the Brain Mapping Center, which you walked by on your way here.
Yep.
And they were able to tour that lab and sit down with the head of the lab and talk to him.
We heard you had your brain mapped as well.
I had my brain mapped. They're doing a big brain mapping study here, and I volunteered. It turns out my brain is normal. Who knew? So they let me participate in the study.
I'm not going to the lab now.
I got to sit in a large fMRI machine, and then they had me do these very simple cognitive tasks where I would push a button with my finger to answer certain questions. I had goggles and an audio on, because you can't move when you're in an fMRI machine. If you move, you ruin the image. Yeah. So it would just be that. It was a lot of fun. I would recommend everyone volunteer at least once.
Now, how do you use the web to communicate? Because I've been looking at your blog. How does that fit into your mission?
Well, we're very nascent at the moment on the web, but that's definitely, phase 1 was pretty much setting up the program. We just launched last November with a large symposium, and we do have a rudimentary web page, and we did start a blog, which, by the way, is a huge thing for the National Academy. They were very nervous about starting a blog, and I give them a lot of credit for letting us do this.
Why are people still, after 8 years or 9 years of blogging?
Well, you're dealing. This was an organization that was founded by Abraham Lincoln. You know? Yeah. These are august esteemed individuals, and they get a little nervous with some of the technology, but I think it's wonderful what
has
doing.
It done for the program in terms of talking? Can you give me some examples of things that have already happened because you're doing the blog?
Well, I think the blog right now is just kind of a way to show how these two worlds intersect. We want to kind of demonstrate the concept. So a lot of our blog posts will deal with that intersection. If Harry Potter opened up, we would do a piece on the science of Harry Potter. We would just point to the fact that a man named Roger Highfield wrote a book about this, and that there is, in fact, science can be found anywhere, even the world of wizards. So the other thing we're very interested in doing is turning our nascent website into something more of a portal. Yeah. We'd like to be doing things in the way of podcasts. We'd like to be having in-person video interviews. Right now we're primarily using that multimedia that we're getting from elsewhere and linking to it or embedding it on the blog. Yeah. But we would very much like to start producing some original content. We did a set of DVD extras for Lost season 5. The DVD is coming out this fall. And one of the things that's up now online, it's wonderful. They took this whole concept. They interviewed these 3 physicists on the physics of time, because that was the whole story arc of season 5 of Lost. And they've turned it into Lost University, like an online university. It's sort of an interactive user interface that they're putting together with the launch of the DVD. And they have these 3 real scientists. And there's all these Easter eggs that people can go and hunt down clues for this little interior game that's going on. And along the process, people get exposed to science.
Yeah.
And I think we're very interested in using web-based tools like that for what we like to call teaching moments. I think a lot of times people, scientists in particular, think that our sole purpose is to get more accurate science in Hollywood. And that's part of it, but we really see it as a broader mission.
Yeah.
We think that you can only go so far. I mean, Hollywood is about entertainment, it's about narrative, and you're going to have to take liberties with the science.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't use it to teach.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it can't inspire people to want to learn more. So things like these DVD extras and some of these online materials, I think, are the wave of the future when it comes to tapping
if
into
movies
this.
were accurate, you wouldn't have any sounds in the explosions in Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's where you start to see the creative takes over from the reality, right? If you were actually in space and there was a explosion out your window, you wouldn't hear it, you wouldn't feel it, right? Because there's no air to cause a shockwave. But in a movie theater, you want to entertain an audience, and so you put things that wouldn't happen in real life.
Well, yes, and that's part of the fun of it. I mean, the cast of Ally McBeal are not real lawyers, and lawyers actually used to cringe at some of the things that were done on that television for dramatic purposes. Dramatic license will win, no matter what. We just had a panel at Comic-Con, and we worked with the TV show Fringe, and we're friendly with the 2 writers there, so we had them, and we had Jane Espenson, who's the showrunner for Caprica, and Jamie Palia, who is the showrunner for Eureka, and they're tech consultants. And it was interesting, the Fringe guys, because if you've seen Fringe, I mean, it's rightly named. I mean, they basically take a nugget of real science and they just take it to like the next level.
Yeah.
That's what the show's about. We think that's fine. As long as, and what they did with Fringe, their DVD extras are going to have the science behind Fringe. Here's the nugget we started with, and we interviewed some real world scientists, and there's going to be bonus features on 6 of those episodes.
Very cool.
And we think that's marvelous.
Yeah.
And also, Star Trek inspired a lot of technology that didn't exist when it first came on. So I think that a lot of the things that maybe aren't possible now, sure, Hollywood is taking it beyond what's currently possible, but it's going to inspire young people to want to become scientists and create those things.
Yeah.
I think the inventor of the cell phone was inspired by Star Trek. That's why we now have these flip-up.
What do you think is the most unlikely thing you've seen in a movie lately that...
Oh, it's got to be nuking the fridge. Come on, in Indiana Jones, that's my personal favorite.
Yeah.
And the irony is, in the exact same movie, they had a moment of accurate science. If you remember, young Indy, we're going through a cave, and the young Indy gets those scorpions on him, and he's panicking, and finally he brushes it off him, and his dad goes, "Well, how big was it?" And he goes, "It was really big." He goes, you got nothing to worry about. It's the little ones that are deadly." That's correct. One of our advisory board members is an entomologist named Mae Berenbaum, and she loves that scene. She goes, now everyone's going to go see Indiana Jones and remember that little fact, and it's true.
That's cool. And now, was that an example of where the exchange?
That was not. I mean, they actually just happened to get that right. That's an example of what can be accomplished.
Did they get that right because they knew an entomologist, or did they just guess?
Maybe they just Googled it. I don't know. But Google is a wonderful thing. I mean, I think Hollywood more than ever has access now to at least a rudimentary place. And what we try and do is narrow the search for them and find them someone who is really attuned to what they're trying to do and can help them turn that raw information into a story.
Very interesting.
One of the projects that we did work on was Watchmen. It was in our pilot phase, and we hooked them up with Jim Kakelios, who's a physicist who wrote The Physics of Superheroes. So he already loved Watchmen. He's a big comic book fan. And this ties into the web-based idea. Once the film got close to being released, and he was free to talk about what he had done on the film, he put together, through his university, a YouTube video showing clips. He had permission to use clips of the movie and talking about Dr. Manhattan and his quantum nature and how that might have worked. And he got to talk about classic physics ideas like particle wave duality and the double slit experiment in the context of Watchmen, and it got over 2 million views.
Wow.
And Jim told us that he would have had to lecture to countless classes constantly to get that viewership. And that's the power of web-based Hollywood and science.
hooking onto a brand that normal people understand
and already
is,
care about.
Yeah, is a
Yeah.
good way to drag in some teaching.
And it gets across the idea that science is not something that is scary and separate. It's something that is part of our lives.
Yeah.
There is a scientific angle to every movie. We do a lot of sci-fi film and TV simply because that's those people think to call us.
Yeah.
But in fact, there is science in even a simple love story if you've got some little piece of technology that has a plot point. All crime drama turns on science and technology at this point.
I didn't, when I started talking with you, I didn't know why I would have you on Building 43, because Building 43, the site that we're on, is aimed at helping businesses understand the modern world, modern web. But I think there's a lesson there for businesses to try to hook on to brands, to movie entertainment brands.
I think that's really important. I mean, we again, getting back to our Comic-Con panel, one of the tech advisors, he was the tech advisor for Eureka, is JPL's Kevin Grazer. He also was an advisor on Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And he says, he's been involved in education outreach for years and goes to high schools and things. He goes, when he got those tech consulting gigs on Battlestar Galactica and Eureka, because there's always that kid, who's like, that kid sits up when he hears Battlestar Galactica, and suddenly he's paying attention.
Yeah.
And the first question is, do you know Trisha Helfrich,
Yeah.
which is the star of the show. So you're tapping into something that they're already excited about to sell your product, which I guess in our case would be science.
Yeah. Tell me some stories about. Do you go out on the sets and get to visit with the directors?
We've had a. Sometimes they do this very nicely. They're very nice to me. In that respect, I will set up a lot of these bigger think tanks, and then in thanks, they will sometimes give us a tour. We've seen like the set of Iron Man, which was a lot of fun. Tony Stark's lab that they basically saved from the first Iron Man movie and just kind of reconstructed out there at Marvel Studios. We consulted on a Bones episode, and we got to see the lab where they do the dissections. And they apologized because they didn't have a big model of a big gooey body on there for us, because that would have been terrific. So they're very nice about that.
Yeah.
We've sat down with some really wonderful people and some big name directors, and they've been incredibly gracious and really, really excited and open about the science, and very serious about getting their science right, even though they're telling, say, a story about Thor, the god of thunder. They still want to get those little fine points right.
Yeah. Since we talked to a lot of innovators, geeks, scientists out there, how can they help you get your mission, or build a better network of people like at Google or at Microsoft or?
I think that a lot of what we're doing here in our first year is figuring out where those synergistic connections are. Because I think there's a lot of people who are interested in this sort of thing, and it's been very fragmented. And one of the things that I hope to do is start meeting up with some of these people who have mass communication skills, who are good at doing, say, online web content. I'd love to meet up with the people who did the Lost University, and talk to them about how they came up with that idea and they designed it, and watch how that works and develops, because I think it's a brilliant way of marketing their product and also marketing science at the same time.
Yeah.
So we're definitely looking for that, and we're always looking for people with specific expertise in a field of science or computer science or math who are willing to serve as technical consultants, because the bigger the net we can cast, the more leeway we have in choosing who we can match up with. We want to be able to find the perfect match if possible.
Very cool. Well, good luck on your mission, because it's really important way to turn culture more toward understanding what's going on in the scientific world.
Well, I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.